here.
Okay.
But we're good whenever.
Okay, let's get started. Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting for August 22nd, 2018. If you're recording, please let us know because we are live recording. If you have cell phones, please put them on silence. We appreciate it. Starting with the public meeting, public comment for items not being heard tonight. Any public comment? Seeing not, we'll go to public hearing, notice of intent. We have a couple continuances. Mary D. Starr, 19 East Creek Road, and Gregory Rates, 19 East Creek Road, are continued till September 18th. And in the certificates compliance, Brewster, 25 Wall Street, is continued till September 5th. So we're going to start with Sconset Beach Preservation
All
Plan.
right, I am taking your word for you now. So the purpose of this still being on the agenda is we've been continuing, and we had been working. I know we sent a bunch of emails around to set the schedule for testimony to be taken on that through special public hearings. We left it on the agenda tonight because it's been continued to this date, but just to simply run through what the dates that have been scheduled are and to go over locations and those things. So we're not actually taking direct information, but in the goals to be kind of open and when those meetings are going to be. We have scheduled by kind of request and necessity. Mondays are the days for Sconset Bluff hearings on alternate from the meetings, but the dates that we've scheduled to this point, we can use any or all of these and still have meetings in between if necessary. But these are the dates that we've booked are the 17th of September, the 1st of October, the 22nd of October, the 5th of November, the 19th of November, and the 3rd of December. Again, may not use them all. We may need more, but we've booked those to this point. Those will all be downstairs, so in the community room at 4 p.m. So same time on Mondays, downstairs. So the first one we'll be taking testimony on the project and the application is on the 17th of September. We are asking for everybody for getting online into the packet that to try to get us everything at least by the Thursday or Friday before the meeting if you want to submit written comments, so everyone at least has the weekend to look at those. If you could get them to the Wednesday before us, that would give everyone 2 business days, 2 weekend days, and the hearing day to look at those things. So as much in advance as possible, but those are the dates that we've scheduled. We're anticipating having town council for any and all of those there as well, so hopefully we are ready to go. And that's it. So then at that point, we just need to continue this to the 17th of September.
Okay. Motion?
Motion to continue.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that's the plan.
Jeff,
Yes.
just in looking at that,
It could be so easy.
the continuation dates for Star and Reyes must be off.
For 9/18?
Yeah. If the bluff is 9/17.
Let me look really quickly. It's the 19th for 9/19 for that one. And then we switch. Yes.
So, okay, so we're continuing Mary D. Starr and both of them, right?
Yes, sir.
Gregory Reyes, 19 East Creek Road till September 19th, not the 18th. Okay. Okay, so we're going on to Crichton House Holdings LLC, 133 Pulpus Road.
Good evening. For the applicant, David Haynes. We have a new plan before you that seems to be satisfied all parties involved. It is a slightly, from the last time, it's a slightly redesigned detention basin or infiltration rain garden at the toe of the slope. down in this area, the pool is up here, down here, the wetland is over here. This is designed now at the capacity of 660 cubic feet approximately. Mr. Bracken recommended 175 cubic feet, so it's 3 times bigger than it needs to be. He has reviewed the plan, he is satisfied. It is basically a basin with a berm on the side, and then 3 infiltration pipes to get the water down into the ground. And currently the site, so that's that's the final change on the plan. Currently what's going on the site, the slope is up here around the swimming pool has been loamed, and part of it's got jute netting on it. He bought all the jute netting that was on the island and ran out, so he's waiting for more. He's going to be seeding it with just a rye mix tomorrow morning to seed that, and also then he's going to hydro seed it in September with a wetlands or the wildlife conservation mix. And then he's going to plant shrubs and then allow everything to grow back in. That little basin at the bottom of the hill is going to be seeded with a wildlife conservation mix and allowed to naturalize. In 2 years, you won't even know it's there. It's going to be full of shrubs. The shrubs have come back on the adjoining property and around the fences up in this area where it's brush hog off the property. This area actually is all 2 feet, 2.5 feet tall with a variety of things in there, shrubs. So basically that's it. The attorney, David, is here representing the neighbors, and Mr. Bracken has reviewed the plan and agrees that it's basically what the intent is. Everybody does feel it's a little bit of overkill because everything's going to be vegetated anyway, and there's not really going to be very much, but everybody's happy now.
Thank you, David. David Buck, I represent the owners of 137 Pulpus Road. Whit Gifford, who represents the owners of 135 Pulpus Road, couldn't be here today, so he sends his regards and asked for me to speak on their behalf as well. We're all in agreement on the revised plan, and we thank David for all his efforts in accommodating our requests, and we're in support of the plan. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
So is there any questions? Okay, any questions from the public? Jeff, you have everything you need to close?
Yes, sir.
Okay, move
Would
to
you like-
close.
Okay, give a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your patience.
Thanks, David.
Actually, look pretty good.
Yes. That's a big deal.
Okay.
Thanks, David.
Paul J. Brody, 11 East Street.
Good afternoon, Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, representing the applicant. Also with me is Joe Paul, BPC Architecture. At the last meeting back on July 25th, the commission had requested some supplemental information which we submitted on Friday, specifically cross-section details of the proposed wood patio and drainage analysis. And then we had submitted the revised, or a wooden patio cross-section detail that Joe had put together that depicts 2x6 sleepers resting on a 2-inch bed of sand overlaying 12-inch crushed stone and clean sandy fill at variable depths based on what would be necessary to hit those grades. And that clean fill would come from the excavation footprint itself. Based on the prior soil testing, the subgrade soils below had a high infiltration rate. And we also increased the deck spacing, board spacing from 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch to allow for greater infiltration. Bracken Engineering had put together a memo with the drainage calculations on the design and confirmed that the wood patio would adequately infiltrate runoff for the 100-year storm, which is 7 inches of rainfall over a 24-hour period. Discussed at the last meeting, the roof runoff from the cottage and the reconstructed dwelling are being directed to separate dry wells. So the patio is just infiltrating vertically and naturally. So we feel strongly that the proposed design will function as a pervious feature and function for better drainage in comparison to a typical dry laid stone patio. And just to reiterate some other aspects of the project, we are increasing the structural setbacks to the resource areas. There's no work within the flood zone. 50 feet away, greater than 50 feet away from the coastal dune, 75 feet away from the salt marsh, and the closest resource area is that policy coastal bank based in the flood zone. And as proposed, there's a structural decrease of 401 square feet. We feel that the proposed stormwater management and wastewater management will provide an improvement over existing conditions. And finally, as previously discussed and reviewed, the applicant is proposing to remove and replace 7,000 square feet of existing lawn with a naturalized plant community, shrub plant community. We spec'd out those species as bayberry, beach plum, highbush blueberry, arrowwood, and/or sweet pepper bush, and effectively leaving only a walking path and a small little circular lawn area north of the dwelling. So as proposed, we feel that the proposed conditions will serve as a significant improvement over existing. Turn it over to questions.
Any questions?
I have just some thoughts going forward with this, and how it integrates, and does it need to integrate into a concrete retaining wall? So I'm looking at the cross section, and in the front of this thing, it looks like it gets supported by a concrete retaining wall. So that really falls into the definition of a structure. That does. And having this tie-in, I understand that this acts, and the rest of it would act like a patio, like a pervious patio with just wood for the surface. And I like that idea, but the concrete wall is a little bit of a stretch.
Now, we did include the concrete wall in our structural numbers
Okay.
as a structure. The alternative that we did consider was just tapering the grades down and having that no defined edge. And we felt that retaining wall would serve to better to contain the amount of regrading, site disturbance, and allow for that lawn area to just be revegetated in the fall.
Okay. So that was really my concern with this.
How deep does it go down?
The retaining wall?
Yeah.
I was like about 2 feet.
Well,
Trying to,
to get to the bottom of that footing.
From existing grade?
Yeah.
Well, the maximum height of it is, the depth surface is 24 inches above the grade. So the wall itself only comes out of the ground about, say, 1'10". So technically, it doesn't need to be a pour. It's almost like a landscape wall. And that's what the genesis of it was. So, like if you had a landscape wall to retain a patio. So it's shown as having a footing, but it could be done as a landscape wall on a bed of crushed stone. It doesn't need to meet if it's retaining less than 36 inches of earth, it's not technically a structural retaining wall, it's more of a landscape wall.
Because
If it was a structural wall, then you'd need to have a footing that the bottom of the footing would be 4 feet below the grade.
right, I mean, taking up Ben's point, I was looking at it and thinking, it looked in this drawing, there's no scale that I can see it looked as though it was going down about 5 feet. Is that just the fact that
Yeah, it's really not to scale.
it's not to scale? Okay.
So when I look at this one, the only way it's net benefit is if this revegetation is really focused on by the homeowner. I mean, do you guys have a plan for that over the next few
For
years?
management,
Yeah, for management and install, just because that's kind of the main crux of this. And if it's just like plants that aren't really taking off, that are going to require constant irrigation, they're coming in, they're getting, because this is the way, unfortunately, it gets done, people like mulch and then scrape the mulch every year. Like if it's not a truly naturalized area, I can't see the net benefits here.
we are proposing drip line irrigation just to get the plantings established. Joe has had a lot of conversations with the property owners, and they really are supportive of the idea of letting this be naturalized and just having your usable, livable conditions transition immediately to a native plant community.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some conversations with Julie Jordan about this at one point, and she would like to be involved if only it's done exactly the way you described, which is the client's intent. And it actually enhances what they like about the property, which is this idea that they are at the edge of the wetland. And it took a little convincing to get them to put the lawn on the south side of the house with the house blocking the view. So that now they love this idea of being able to not engage that area except for that little path. So they really want it to feel natural, all right up to that, to the
Okay,
edge of
We
the
could
path.
put a condition in there that says like no mulch.
okay,
These aren't like landscape beds, it's more of a natural.
right, so
Right.
to submit
Yeah, yeah.
evidence that it's naturalizing, et
Exactly.
cetera. Okay.
And, the typical monitoring requirements would be part of this, considering that this is the crux of our net benefit package. That monitoring, reports would be submitted on an annual basis.
Is this lawn area going to have a permanent irrigation system?
Not permanent, just drip line to get them established.
Yeah, but the drip line's kind of permanent. I mean, it's like 18 inches spaced in the ground. They're not going to pull that up when they're done using it, but.
Well, I mean, if the commission would be okay with permanent, again, it's just to make sure we don't have dieback and getting in there to replace.
I think if you didn't do the irrigation, and you're required to go out there and move water, sprinklers around essentially in order to make sure the plants take hold, I don't think my clients would object to it, even though understanding that it would be a costly endeavor to make sure that somebody's out there essentially a couple times a day for a period of a few months as these
Yeah.
take root. I think they'd be fine with that. We're thinking that it was a way to make sure that the plants really do take root with as minimal human intervention as possible.
Yeah, just because you will have then a significant amount of drip line within the 25-foot buffer.
Actually, would you feel better about risers that are, temporary? Those could,
I mean, I think that might be a better.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's easier to kind of
It's
remove
easier to
after establishment.
remove than the drip line, certainly.
Yeah, you could do something that'd be temporary, and then you could,
Spot water where needed, sort of thing.
yeah, you can get good coverage and then take it out.
Well, that's something you guys can certainly condition to.
Yeah.
Condition whatever system you feel best protects the interests.
Yeah, and I think it's wise to get this stuff well established
Yeah.
and not have to, take the hand watering component out as much as possible, because that's always the weak link.
Once this is established, I wouldn't see,
It shouldn't need
which one should need
water,
any more
yeah.
irrigation.
I mean, within
Right,
3
turn
years,
around,
they
just
should be able
let
to
the
pull
water
those.
go up.
Yeah, I mean, the top of the lawn area is all dense paved area, so I think 3-year period will definitely get to that point.
Is the,
One thing that my client asked at the last meeting relative to that lawn that's on the north side was, they would be okay if that was like gravel and not a lawn at all. In the interest of not introducing any new changes, we've kept it as lawn, but they said that they'd be fine with not having any lawn on the north side at all and just having it be some sort of designation that it's not a planted area. They just want to be able to walk across that spot and have a spot that they could put a lawn chair down on it, but they don't need it to be a lawn necessarily.
Well, lawn isn't necessarily bad if they follow.
Right, if it's
the
mowed
DEP.
meadow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't need fertilizer on the regular, hopefully.
Are these new owners of the property?
Yes.
Okay, so like the aerials of all the debris in the marsh, that'll all be cleaned out?
Yes, there's a lot
If
of,
that's-
I mean, this whole
But,
shoreline.
yeah, I understand that, but
Yeah, that
it's a,
will be cleaned up.
that'd be good. Okay. Other questions? Okay, any questions from the public? Jeff, we have everything we need?
We do.
Ready to close?
Yes.
Move to close.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Kimberly Henry, 59 Swan Road.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. This meeting was continued from last hearing, as Ben had requested and another commissioners had requested, just a little bit more information regarding the backside of a proposed, this was a proposed second dwelling on an existing, essentially developed piece of property with a small isolated wetland that is located in the middle of the property. No waivers are required or requested, and we just were requested to come up with a little bit more detail on the backside of the dwelling. So we have submitted a supplemental plan, which I believe is in your packet. The site itself is kept minimally with regard to landscape. It's not really a manicured lawn. They don't really intend to have a manicured lawn. So essentially what we did was we graded off the backside of the house to a diversion, a berm, if you will, along the backside, outside the 25-foot setback. And then just on the low side of that, it's just planted with beach grass. So there's a minimal lot area, and then the berm itself, and then the beach grass plantings. All of it's outside the 25 setback to that isolated wetland. And if you look at photos of the site, that isolated wetland occurs within basically a mowed meadow field area that's been historically done that way on the site. At the last meeting, we had a email correspondence from NHESP saying that they had no concerns. We do now also have received today an official letter from them regarding no concerns under the Wetland Protection Act and/or the Mass Endangered Species Act. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and that's essentially the supplemental. The only difference is the supplemental grading and/or landscape plan that we submitted, which is not much of a landscape plan. It's basically lawn and beach grass.
Yeah. I appreciate it, Paul.
Questions? Any questions from the public? Okay. Jeff, we have everything we need?
We do.
Ready to close?
Yes.
Motion to close?
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Do we get a second on that?
Yeah, second.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
That passes with top numbers and cues. Loretta Lane Nominee Trust, 3 and 5 Loretta Lane.
For the applicant, Jeff Sparrow. This is a project, second public hearing we reviewed with you at the last meeting for the removing a single-family dwelling from within the buffer zone and then replanting the area. And there was, I think, just one outstanding concern, which was that there had been a few black pines proposed, and we've submitted a revised plan that substitutes the black pines with Arrowwood Viburnum.
Please.
Hope that gives me something to question. Go over the whole thing.
I think that was all right.
That was good.
Everybody
Sounds
content?
great.
Yeah. That was good.
Good. No other questions?
No.
Okay, any questions from the public? Okay, sounds good. Jeff, all set?
All set.
Ready to close?
This is
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Sure.
Holly Farm Realty Trust, 390 Pulpus Road.
Sure.
One plan. Brian Madden from LEC Environmental, representing the applicant. Proposed project before you involves a deck expansion on the northern portion of the existing house and some other landscaping and maintenance activities. The resource areas on the subject parcel include a BVW to the north and two isolated vegetated wetlands that abut the existing driveway. And the proposed deck expansion to the north is outside the 50-foot buffer zone. There's a proposed patio within an existing fenced-in garden area that's south of the dwelling. And the applicant is proposing to do some maintenance upgrades to the existing shell circular driveway. Portions of the existing driveway are within the 25-foot buffer zone. And basically, they're just doing some maintenance to level it off. And actually, there's a slight reduction in the amount of shell driveway in the 25 and 50-foot buffer zone. And as a result of just leveling off the driveway, a small retaining wall is required abutting a bulkhead on the east side of the house. Just that area right there, just to protect that bulkhead. And that's the extent of the work.
Straightforward.
How much grade are they changing to lower?
Yeah, so the, north of the dwelling, there's a prior order of conditions for a septic upgrade. That's a mounted system. The proposed grades here kind of reflect those prior mounting and just kind of softens the grade a little bit. And it tapers out, upgrading of the 25-foot buffer zone. But it's a gentle slope is what they're trying to create out there. I think it's something like 7-1 slope or something.
Yeah, the original one had a much steeper,
Yeah.
more traditional septic mound kind of look.
And all that is contained within the existing lawn area.
Yeah.
But it looks like you are doing some clearing to put in a retaining wall on that side?
Along the east side of the house, which is, or west side of the house rather, that the clearing just minimally gets into the 50-foot buffer zone. The retaining wall is upgraded into the 50, and here's the 100 right here, and then the 50 is right there. So yeah, there's a little bit of clearing along that edge.
And you're going to be using the American hollies, correct? Not the European variety?
Those are all existing hollies.
Oh, they're all existing.
Nothing's
Okay,
being
nothing's
proposed,
new.
yeah.
Okay.
English hollies invasive?
They're not invasive, but why not use the American?
Oh, no.
America.
A lot of them you see as ornamentals are the English.
Yeah, I don't know what's out there actually.
Other questions? No, okay. Any questions from the public on this one? You do? Jeff, we have everything you need?
We do. They're all good.
Move to close.
Okay.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye. Thanks, Brian.
Very much.
Thank you.
Big one.
What happened here?
Kevin G. Martin, 15 High Brush Path.
On this one.
Bad resolution.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of the owner and applicant, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, the owner and applicant being Kevin Martin and Brenda Knoll, who are seated in the back of the audience tonight. This is an application for the addition of a residential swimming pool on an existing developed single-family lot on High Brush Path, which is in Austin Farms subdivision. The regulated or resource areas are bordering vegetated wetlands. There are essentially three separate areas, if you will. There's a wetland located here partially on the existing property, another wetland in the front section of the property, and then there's also a wetland across the street. So the most restrictive is the bordering vegetated wetland on the property. So we have a 25-foot no disturb, 50-foot no build, and a 100-foot buffer depicted on the plan. So the pool itself is completely outside the 50-foot no build. The entire scope of work is within the 100-foot buffer. It is an existing developed portion of the site. It is an existing lawn area that is where the pool is proposed. It's a shallow depth pool, only about 4.5 feet in depth. We are actually elevating the grade in that particular area. The existing grade is around, I think, 23 or 24 in that area. The pool patio will be at 26. So we are elevating the area about 2-3 feet above existing grade. And then we have the 4.5-foot pool depth itself. It's a 40-foot by 12-foot pool. Not a lot of hardscape, a proposed patio on the westerly elevation. And then we also have an 8x10 shed, which is located on the High Brush Path side of the pool itself. We have, based on test pit information I had on the site from when the septic system went in, I have asked for a waiver for groundwater separation. It is proposed to be above the groundwater, but based on what I have, with the elevation that we have now, we're probably, within foot and a half of the estimated high groundwater. Whether or not there's any room there to maybe elevate this up a little bit higher and just create another step to get to it, then the waiver potentially wouldn't be necessary. But right now, I've asked for the waiver only because of the elevations that we have shown on the plan. We would be above groundwater, but we'd be less than the 2-foot separation. Site is not mapped under the Mass Endangered Species Act. Site's not in a, and it's also not in a flood zone. So happy to answer any questions that you may have. Kevin and Brenda here also to answer any questions that they have. They've been in this home for many years now, so it's a property that they've utilized for many years.
Is there a pool fence?
Yeah.
There is existing fencing on the property that we are hoping to use as part of the pool fence enclosure. Brenda's had some discussions with the building department, correct, Brenda, about utilizing that existing fencing, and whether that or not that meets the code. But that was the intention, was to utilize the existing fencing that is out there. In some cases, it's in the brush on the backside of the property, but it is existing fencing that is there.
So is it permitted fencing within the 50? Because if it's not permitted within the 50, that's not good.
Well, the wetland line here has changed a little bit from when the subdivision was originally approved, actually, so that the wetland now is more restricted than it was on the original subdivision. So I guess we'd have to look at where the line was when the fence was put in, which was some time ago. The fence has been there for some time.
Yeah, I'd say,
But the wetland line on the subdivision plan is not the same line that's on this plan.
Okay.
yeah, the in between, so when the High Brush Path subdivision went in, it was before we were using hydric soils to delineate those wetlands. We've seen this a lot in this neighborhood where they've encroached in. We just did a certificate of compliance I won't say a few meetings ago, it was probably like 6 months ago, up on the other end of High Brush Path on, I think it was on Duhamic Circle. That that cert was on, where we've seen the wetland line change enough where it's moved. I'll be honest and say, when we did our site inspection, we could see the gate that was in the fence, and then the rest of the fence is totally gone. So, I honestly think trying to remove that fence would probably cause a lot more than just letting it sit, because it's a lot of grape, a lot of vine that runs through there. And like I said, it's a gate and then disappears into the bushes. It's the last you see of it, so.
So, I noticed that there's no large-scale drawing about how big the patio is actually going to be. And so my estimate is that you've got roughly about 800 square feet that is no longer going to receive rainwater to drain down to make sure the wetlands don't get even smaller.
Well, the intent would be, Kevin, the patio itself would be a bluestone type of...
Bluestone patio.
Bluestone.
Uh-huh.
All right, yeah. So I give you the actual dimension here.
And you're asking for a waiver even though, from groundwater, even though you're actually raising it?
Yes, I'm raising it just to get it as high as we can. So that's 12 feet in by 30 feet.
12 by 30
That's
for the patio?
Yeah. So, Kevin, if you could come on up for a second, we can just take a look at something.
360, well, less than half of that.
So Kevin, the groundwater, so the patio we have is about elevation 26, which is about 2 feet higher than the grade that's out here right now. That's a 24 coming through there. So I know we wanted to keep that pool elevated.
Right, and
So
actually this corner here, I believe, is the finished height. I believe this corner by the gate
Yeah.
is actually 22 inches higher. It actually, toward the no-build zone is actually higher than the
Yeah.
one.
So what Ian is saying, so because there's a 2-foot separation of groundwater, that without, that if we can't maintain, we need a waiver. So if we were able to elevate the pool patio a little bit higher, I wouldn't necessarily need that waiver. So it may mean another step coming up, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand.
The road is up around, so if you're comfortable with the fact that we'd be up a little bit higher, that instead of 24 to 26, we went 24 to 27, then I could not request that waiver. And, you know, it's only, like I said, it's only a 4.5 foot depth, but
Right.
but it may mean another step and then elevating that pool up a little bit higher in that hole. So, I mean, this existing patio you have here is up at 27.
Right,
So it almost matched the patio on the backside of the house, is what we would do.
right.
And then you're just gonna grade back to the 24 line, or you're gonna have a retaining wall on the edge?
This would be a wall right here that would match the existing, it's a Pennsylvania wallstone wall on the house side.
Right.
So you would need to have that here to retain the elevation.
Yeah, it wasn't intended to elevate it and grade it. It was a low wall with steps up to the area.
At this point, the wall's approximately 21 inches high.
And then on the patio side, because that's close to the wetland.
That would match grade. That would
You're gonna
essentially, that would just be
grade back
graded.
down.
Yeah, that would just be graded. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I need to see more detail with the pool fence, where that stuff's gonna fall in relation to the 50-foot no-build.
Yeah, the fence was my only concern.
What is your concern?
The fence was my only
Yeah.
concern, only because it wasn't shown in existing, but
And the
does
way-
it surround the whole property? Does it go all the way to the app?
Yes, around this whole property.
Yep.
How old is that fence, do you have any idea?
20 years.
20 years old. Okay.
So it's reached the end of its natural life?
Well, we replaced, it's a split rail fence, so we
Ah, gotcha.
replace, you know, rail as needed.
Yeah, gotcha.
So it's been maintained, but
chicken wire now, or whatever, pool wire.
The pool fencing, now it has vinyl coated wire on it to keep dogs in. and
Gotcha.
out.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Any other concerns? Okay. Any concerns, questions from the public? Okay.
I would say really quickly, we do have a file number for this, and it's
Oh,
SE 483107.
So, you mind giving us some more detail on that fence?
Yeah, if the commission sees fit that they want to get
Yeah, let's
get in
see.
there and try to locate what that fence is right now, at least see where it is. I mean, that's what we can,
Well, is this dotted line the fence?
yeah. No, it's not.
That's just it.
It's not.
This just happens. It's not noted, that's sort of the thing.
Okay.
Those fences become sort of critical to habitat.
We weren't really planning on disturbing that back fence. It was just leave the fence where it is. And it's overgrown the
Yeah,
brush in the back.
yeah, you don't know what the building department's gonna say yet.
Yeah, they're gonna make you,
Improve it.
yeah.
Improve
Yeah.
it.
Which we were hoping to do with a limited amount of brush cutting.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Which is in the winter, now it's really overgrown,
Right.
fine. But in the winter, you can get in there.
You can get in there
you
and
know.
put- you have to put on what you have to put on.
Put the 4-foot pool fence in.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't personally have a problem with the pre-existing fence that
No.
was there.
I don't either.
No, but if they have to substantially improve it to meet pool code and it's going right through the wetland, I think we need to deal with that.
Well, that would also, I would say, I mean, that would require an amendment at a minimum to deal with something like that.
Oh, I know it's not in the wetland, I know that. But it is
But-
in the buffer.
Any relocation or reinstallation of that fence would have to come in since it's not part of the initial proposal, would have to come in as an amended order of conditions request.
Well, it sounds as though you're saying that the wetland shrunk and that it's no longer within the 50 foot.
The wetland grew.
Excuse me.
It was small when the fence got put in.
No, so when this whole subdivision went in originally, it was back when wetlands were only really delineated by vegetation. And grapevines, ironically enough, are not wetland indicator plants in this area. It's just, you see them, they're just covered in grapevines. But as they've added the other two criteria with the hydrology and the soils, this is another one of those wetlands, kind of like Meadowview Drive. It's another one where there's a bunch of them where they went in around these wetlands and did soils work, and all of a sudden the wetlands went.
I must say, I'd like to see a detailed drawing of the pool and the elevations. I mean, you know, I don't want to add to your expenses here, but, you know,
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think I'd have no problem with something close, you know, sort of cutting across and rejoining and leaving the wetland open for the wildlife,
Right.
you know, instead of surrounding the whole property in that.
Right, well, there's
Not
quite a
bad.
bit of, the fence is, you know, and I'm just guessing, the whole property down here, the fence is gonna be, it's approximately right here.
Oh, so right now.
So it doesn't go to
Right
the
now.
edge.
Oh,
It's
so yeah,
really
okay.
right behind this patio.
Okay.
That's where the existing fence is, and there's a
I
fence that
see.
down both property lines and across here. So this whole back is not fenced.
Okay, see, that's the thing, we don't really
So if it had been drawn on here, it would
be right up against the patio.
possibly be about 5 feet from the back of this patio.
And that's pre-existing.
And that's
Okay.
pre-existing, and it's heavily vegetated.
Okay. So I didn't know that. Well, that would be,
Well, that's all right.
that'd be more of a
I
plus.
think it
for
would be
me.
good to have, yeah, on the plans.
Yeah, it'd be good to have it on the plan, but I don't see.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna probably have to show, we're gonna have to show it to the building department anyway, I guess, so.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so.
Yeah, the subdivision plan doesn't even show any wells on the property. So-
What year is that from?
I guess you're good when you put the fence in there.
You did have a more current drawing.
Yeah, there was one that had a little bit, yeah, this was 85.
Okay. So yeah, if we could have got that the detail on the You wanted the grades and...
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah, that'd be appreciated.
And I think we can,
And great in
I'll
detail
look at-
on
I'm going to leave the waiver request in right now, but we'll also look at the,
Yeah.
that.
that separation and maybe I can get it.
I mean, I
Maybe
need
we'll
it.
get that, with 1 extra foot of height, if we're going to lift
Right.
it anyway. You know, maybe it'll just do away with having to need that also, you know. As long as I keep the walls under 4 feet, that's all I would, you know, I don't want to have to, you know, the wall that we had elevated before, we want to keep under 4 feet.
Yeah, but you said it was under 2 feet,
Yeah, it's
right?
21 inches. as it
21
stands
inches,
now.
right,
Yeah, from the
so-
high point of the lawn, which is actually this back corner where the gate is, you go through, is 21 inches higher than where this actual lawn is on this side.
Turn into an infinity pool like everybody else.
Well, it's gonna be pretty similar to an infinity pool, where this wall, which
Yeah.
is gonna basically be 2 feet from the edge of the pool.
Yep.
Just enough to retain, you know, so you don't have the side of the pool sticking out of the ground.
Yeah, they get away without having the fences with those things, which is bizarre.
Well, it changes every time you,
Yeah, I
you
know.
what they want, so we'll go with what they're asking for right now.
Okay. So, continue for 2 weeks on this one? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't even know what they did.
So Norman M. and Susan I. Fidel. 3 Cudweed Road. Where's Cudweed?
Swan Road, plan on the back of that one.
There it is, Cudweed.
We do have a file number for this one too, Mr. Chairman. This is
Oh.
3106. Yeah, Cuddy Road is out behind Bartlett Farm.
Yes, so this, again, for the applicant, Paul
Oh, right.
Santos with
Yeah,
Nantucket
okay.
Surveyors, applicant being the property owner, Norman and Susan Fidel, who are seated to my right against the wall here. This is an application for an addition to an existing residential property located at the intersection essentially of Hellaway and Cudreed Road, which is the backside of Bartlett Farm, if you will. So on the backside, where we just permitted the solar panels, it's on the backside of the farm, adjacent to where the land bank recently purchased the large tract off of Bartlett's. This is, what we have is a vegetated wetland, which is bordering what is known as Little Reedy Pond. The 25-foot, 50-foot, and 100-foot buffer zones on the plan. It's an application that requires no waivers. All work is outside of the 50. The addition does fall between the 50 and the 100, but it does fall within an area that's already an existing developed area around the backside of the house. The application itself is in the MMD zoning district, which actually required us to go to the planning board for a special permit, because any work in the MMD requires a special permit from the planning board. So that's been vetted. We do have a special permit from the planning board for the work. The site is outside of any mapped endangered species area, so we did not have to file with NHESP. And as I said, the no waivers are required for the work. It's essentially putting an addition, small, shallow crawl space, if you will, or a small foundation wall to support the addition to the existing house. And that's the extent of the application. Access would be essentially maybe through the existing drive. We may have to cut a small path through the backside here to get around the corner of the backside of the house for access for construction vehicles. But essentially, that would be it. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. It's a pretty straightforward application.
Any questions?
It's indeed straightforward.
No, very simple, yeah. Questions from the public? Jeff, we have everything you need?
We do.
You'd like to close?
Yes, please.
Excellent.
Move to close. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There you go.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
So, request for determination, Pine Grove, ACK LLC, 18 Pine Grove Road.
for the applicant, Art Gasparo. I'm before you tonight with a request for determination of applicability for work within the buffer zone to a water and vegetated wetland. Shown on the plan in blue is the wetland boundary, the 25 and 50-foot buffer zones. In green, I have a proposed silt fence around sort of the 38-foot line. And then the work that's proposed in the 100-foot buffer zone is out on the other side of the house, closer to the road. The proposed work is to reconfigure the driveway, install some retaining walls, and put an addition on the house. All the structural work is outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. I don't believe any waivers are required, and that the project will qualify for the determination that the boundary is correct and that the filing of the notice is not necessary. We'd be happy, it's existing residential neighborhood in Pine Grove area. We have to address questions or concerns. I also just might add quickly, sorry, that I put spot elevations on there so that you can see there's quite a drop down to the wetland. You know, the house is up at 18 and the wetland's down at 9. And it's actually already a walkout basement. You see the front of the house is up at 24. So it would only be a 4-foot foundation at the back, so we're not close to groundwater, no water in or anything like that.
Any concerns?
Nope. I would say we did confirm that wetland boundary as well.
Okay. Any concerns from the public? Questions? Jeff, do you have a recommendation on this one?
I do, for a positive 2A that confirms the resource area, and then a -3 allowing for work in the buffer zone without requiring a notice of intent.
Okay, someone can make that motion.
Move to approve.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Running Richard Phillips, trustees, 19 East Tristram's Ave.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Stantos, on behalf of the property owner and applicant, Richard Phillips. This is a minor mod request to incorporate a landscape plan into the record or into the file. This was work that was, I actually made a color thing here. The computer's what I was looking at today. Maybe this one. So this is a plan that was submitted, just, I put some color on it, just to make it kind of easier for me today when I was trying to figure out what we were doing. So this was the relocation of an existing beach house on the backside of this particular property. The 100-foot buffer zone is shown in red on the plan that you have in front of you. And so what this does is the area where the house was picked up and moved, we've just shown the area that we're going to revegetate and plant. We were moving a boardwalk and a stairway to a different location on the site. And then basically what we're doing is replicating the area that was disturbed, that was previously disturbed, where the dwelling was, or where the beach house was, essentially with beach grass and bayberry. There is some arrowwood viburnum shown on the property line, and then some bayberry that falls within the 100. And then there's some work outside the 100, but that's outside of jurisdiction where the shed is. So it's basically an area, it's a replication of the area that was disturbed previously when we moved the beach house. So essentially returning it to beach grass and bayberry. And then the area where the existing septic system is, again, beach grass and bayberry. And then there's a small lawn area in the area to the west of what was the former dwelling. So it's essentially the footprint and everything is the same as the notice of intent. This is just detailing what the area was. I think on the original NOI plan, it just simply said revegetate disturbed areas with native plantings. I mean, it was a generic type of nomenclature. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
We have a black pine problem again, at least I.
Yeah, I noticed that's outside the 100 here, Ernie, but I will.
It is
I will
out of
mention it.
jurisdiction.
I've seen it on the last 3 or 4 jobs.
It's the rage.
I don't know what it is, but it's.
It cycles in like every 2 or 3 years.
Because the old ones all die, yeah.
And I know Art just said it's the last 3 or 4 plans I've had, they're specking that. So. It's outside the 100 here, Ernie, but I will mention it to them.
I mean, they don't live very long. They get that beetle and
Junk. I like the dead look.
Well, it's sort of interesting. Because basically, part of me feels they should live with the consequence of the peninsular effect, which is to have those stairs going down to, where they can only access their beach sometimes.
The front one.
Your conditions are duly noted on the original order of conditions.
You enjoyed saying that, didn't you?
Okay, and any other concerns, questions about the plantings? Okay. Any concerns from the public on the plantings? Okay, seeing that, someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, move to issue the minor mod.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one passes unanimously. Okay, certificates of compliance. Myers, 41 Dukes Road.
I should recuse myself on this one, Mr. Chairman.
Sure, so this is a bit of an involved project. So they constructed a deck, installed some dry wells, and then converted from septic to sewer into the Duke Road sewer that's there, and then they amended it once to include a deck and revegetate some areas. The work is complete and is complete in compliance. I guess our staff recommendation is that the certificate be issued, but with condition 19 ongoing, that the monitoring for that area continue for the restored area.
Okay. Someone like to make that motion?
move to issue with ongoing condition 19.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That one passes unanimously. With Commissioner Shampoo recused. Sorry. Okay. Orders of conditions.
Oh, and then you gotta sign that guy. I'll also have to do it again later.
Do we have to do anything more, Wisconsin?
Oh, no.
No?
No.
No. This was printed on there.
Yeah, we started listing all the notices that were there. Was it just in case? Don't want someone to get touchy and say that you discussed something and wasn't on the agenda. If anyone remembers the early 2000s, we just had orders of conditions just listed as a section with nothing in it. So, try to keep us out of trouble.
We're counting on you, Jeff.
That's what we have Joanne for. So the first one would be that Crichton House Holdings.
Yeah. 133. 133 Pulpus Road.
So nowhere on there's a finding we don't normally have. Just wanted to memorialize that this stemmed from the enforcement back in April. And then just had a photo monitoring thing of the disturbed areas, just kind of all disturbed areas within the commission's jurisdiction. And then of the drainage swale in particular, but. I couldn't think of anything else.
Pretty simple.
Most of the
Yeah.
Most of the real work on site is outside of jurisdiction. The work that they're fixing is the oopsie work.
Make us well.
That is the technical term from DEP as well. Oopsie work.
Okay.
Move to approve as drafted.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. That passes unanimously.
It's finally done.
Don't jinx it, man.
You decided, so. All right, so on Brody, we closed 11 East Street.
Yeah.
I took some notes during that people seem to be interested in debris cleanup from the kind of the near shore area. Some conditions in regards to any irrigation. Then obviously monitoring conditions that's there. And then it seemed to be some sort of guarantee on the restoration work, some sort of survivorship, and that it will be completed over a duration of time with the monitoring too.
And Jeff, is that something, I know you can't condition more than 3 years, but usually planting goes in after a house, and if we only have a year's worth of data because it takes that long, can you condition?
So if they come in for certificate of compliance, that's why it's important to get conditions that are easy to put as ongoing conditions, because then you still require them, and if they don't comply with those, then they're subject to enforcement, and it's work done under the permit that's not in compliance. I think there are other creative solutions to that too, that we've been kind of working on, and we've tried a few times where you have some life to some level of like performance bonding that goes through a period of time that, from some sort of performance bonding contract needs to be in place to install, maintain, and monitor the plantings. And if you set that time duration, at 3 years from the initiation of the plantings, then you would get that time. So if the order ran, you could continue that as an ongoing condition if they came in for their cert. If not, that would be in place and would cover that time.
Oh.
And that's not onerous, that's just protecting the interest to make sure that the work is going to get done and done correctly. I think that's the...
So that could be structured as a percentage survival of the plantings?
Well, sure, percentage of survival I think would be a separate condition from that. I think you would have, a condition that relates to those to evaluate separately that would simply say, kind of similar to what we see on the Wilkinson arrays. It's kind of apples and oranges project-wise, but where you're looking for that, 75 or 90% survivorship in those plantings through that time. And then I think if you have the protections in place to make sure that someone is retained to do that work. So if, you hire Andy Bennett Landscaping to come out and do that work, that if those plants die, they're still on the hook to make sure those plants go back in. So, or that those guys are there.
Terrible work.
So,
Price.
so he's very expensive. So,
I can do that.
I worked with someone who tied fake hydrangea blooms to hydrangeas that weren't blooming. No lie.
That really happened?
Yeah, it really happened.
we're gonna put Ashley under oath later to see who that was.
I was like, you did what?
You did, you did what?
So I think you can put those, but from the conversation, I was generally seeming like it seemed like a positive order for that with those in place.
Yeah.
All right, so I think I can write
So,
that.
and how about the footings to make sure that, I must say, they look massive, as though they were going to end up putting a building there or something. How about, saying that they have to have a crushed stone footing or something?
Well, structural code requires a full-size footing. and
Only
where
if it's
this-
over 3 feet, right? And it wasn't going to be over 3 feet?
Well, I would just say that,
Well, if it's gonna support something, it's gonna be below frost, and it has to be, a proportion of the height.
Right, no, I understand, but I thought
So-
didn't he say that if it was under 32 inches, was it above grade, that then, it just looked pretty massive
it
to
did.
me, and I was wondering
Well, I would
whether
just-
there was a way
But I
to
think they're
make
only
it
going a foot and a
smaller.
half above grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would caution that anytime we see those typical cross-section and details, those are drawn to make the text easy to read sometimes,
Oh.
and not necessarily to proportion. Sometimes they get distorted, so.
Is that a reference to my age?
Could have been a cut and paste.
No, well, that's those things. If you make them small and you try to scale them,
Yeah,
sometimes is it just
They wanted to make sure you saw it.
it starts to look like a tattoo on an 80-year-old. It's just not. It's ugly drafting. No one wants to see
They
it.
punch you in the
So,
system and shoots it up.
I'll leave that well alone
Usually see them do everything.
Yeah, I know.
So John McLaughlin can read it.
just wait 2 more years, it's going to be up to 12. All right.
Yeah, I think you can
Yeah.
do policy.
All right, so we're on to Henry.
Okay.
What are we
Kimberly
at?
Henry.
What are we at here?
59 Swam Road,
120 inch sheet.
Kimberly Henry.
So I had kind of our typical pool to not be drained or discharge to an area within commission jurisdiction, and then just some photo monitoring of that drainage as well, just to make sure that it vegetates and is doing what it's supposed to do.
Pretty good. Straightforward.
Motion approved. Are we good?
Yeah, it was just like, all right. Yeah, recused themselves. Yeah, we're recused. Okay, do we have a second?
Yeah, second, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one passes unanimously with Commissioner Topham recused. Okay. 3 and 5, Loretta Lane. Mr. Cullen.
Sorry, couldn't happen on the job there. I didn't really think of anything for this. I think after they made the change on the plant species, there really wasn't a lot to condition.
No.
Most of it is overly compliant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Move to approve as drafted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Holly Farm Realty Trust. 290 Pulpus Road.
This is for that regrading around that septic system, and then
Yeah.
I couldn't really
That's
think of
really on
anything.
this?
No.
Motion and issues drafted.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one passes unanimously. Martin is continued. So Norman and Susan Fidel.
Yes.
Continued to 2 weeks, right?
Oh, that was continued to, no.
No, I thought we.
No, that wasn't.
No, we closed Cudweed Road.
We closed
Huh?
Cudweed.
That one is
Did we
3106.
close it with conditions?
No, they're gonna.
We closed Fidel,
Yeah, okay, right, yeah.
3 Cudweed Road.
Straightforward.
What?
It's nice to get some easy ones on here.
Closed one.
So I was a bit confused as to whether the road that they were going to put in temporarily for construction was going to go within the 50-foot, and if there should be anything about restoring. When I was looking at the drawing, it seemed hard to tell.
So,
Or the plan.
Ian has a Ian has a suggested condition. I think it's a good one. Is that any construction access be allowed to revegetate to its natural condition? So we'll just add a 19 saying any natural vegetation disturbed by construction access be allowed to revegetate naturally.
Thank you. So, move to approve as amended.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Very good.
All right.
Okay, approval of minutes. Everyone happy with the minutes? Approved by unanimous consent.
So Terry sends her regards. She's out sick. So
dear.
she'll be doing the minutes from the recording
Okay.
because I'm not doing them.
I don't.
So she could be streaming live, you know? You don't know. Actually, Turning Room's not streaming live anymore. No. She can get the tape later when they post it.
Not streaming. We're not streaming live anymore.
No, they only do the downstairs room as a live stream now.
No.
So now these guys have to come and sit through the whole meeting because they can't.
Aren't you lucky?
I was wondering, because I was trying to watch the ACC meeting.
Yeah,
And I-
trying.
Why, what happened? Because of that.
No one seems to know.
I mean, it's Monday.
They should all pitch in for like.
Switch flick.
And so we'll do the whole, like, when we're not being recorded. Yeah. I think they're just getting ready they're moving equipment around and getting ready for
Getting it ready.
David Hall.
the door. That's gonna go in there, whatever's going in the wall when they connect it.
We heard the termite chipping over there earlier.
Monitoring reports.
All right, so it's not necessarily posted directly, but we're kind of continuing from last time. Art had presented a monitoring report last time on the Pocomo Neighbors project, and we decided we wanted to go out and see it. So we went out and saw it on Monday, kind of adding this just to the record of this, to see some of the concerns that the Shapiros who were in a butter had raised about the project, and they're here again tonight, and to see some of the highlights that Art was putting in. I think for some of these projects, it's always nice to go and see outside of photos how they're performing for you guys to see how they're doing. So if either party wants to add anything, you certainly can, or however you guys want to go from there.
I guess I don't have too much to add. I understand the Shapiro's concerns and we try to address what we can. That's how the project is performing well.
For the record, Robert Shapiro, 57 Pocomo Road. First of all, I want to again thank you all for making the time and effort to come out and look at this project on Monday and enjoy the gentle and fair winds of Pocomo that day on the beach. I'm not sure if everyone was there, so I have a couple of photographs for your review since you didn't get to actually directly eyeball it. So my wife and I have been fortunate enough to be able to live on that property for the last 48 years. And during that period of time, we have certainly had some natural erosion that has occurred, not like the oceanfront people have had to put up with, but we've had some limited erosion. There's been a time when we lost 1 foot and maybe other times we lost 2 feet. But the best way I can measure that limited erosion for you is to tell you that the existing stairway to the beach has been there for over 25 years and has not had to been removed or replaced. So if this was just natural erosion that we were talking about that you saw, and you're looking at the photograph here, the kind of erosion that's referred to on the bumper stickers, that erosion happens, I wouldn't be here talking to you. But this is man-made erosion, and this is a whole different situation. I believe that there are several alternatives that I'd like to suggest to you about how we should deal with this. But certainly doing nothing is not an alternative. We need to resolve this problem because I should not have damage to my property so that the neighbors' properties can be protected. I have no problem with the installation that they've made on their properties. I'm not sure how time will tell that how effective that will be. You heard from my neighbor his concern about the sacrificial sand washing into the harbor. That's a whole another issue that we don't need to discuss right now. But I don't think that I should be asked to pay the price for this. So several other alternatives come to mind. There is another proprietor's road further to the west, which comes to the beach in between properties that have already been protected. One could deliver the sand via that proprietor's road, and hopefully the properties that have been protected with the core fiber installations will be more resilient to the impact of wind and water as it hits the sand chute, as I have come to describe it. I'm not sure the neighbors who abut that proprietor's road would be very happy to hear that alternative, especially if they come look at what happened to my property. The second alternative would be to install these logs on my property for a limited extent, maybe 20, perhaps 30 feet. I would remind you that when this property was originally designed, each end had a graduated toe-in, which was designed to protect the adjacent properties. That softened toe-in exists at the western end, it exists at the eastern end, but it doesn't exist next to the sand chute. So maybe an alternative is to have the contractor and in cooperation with the neighbors install 20 or 30 feet on my property. It's another thing to consider, but I still believe that that's only a very temporary solution. And I think that the best solution to this, the best alternative, as we discussed previously, is to move the distribution point down to Pocomo Point. As you all know, there's an established roadway, we'll call it, in the sand. It's traversed by vehicles all the time. In all the years that I've lived there, many people launch their small boats from Pocomo Point. During the family scalloping season, there are trucks down there on the beach all the time. Using that as an access will not destroy any of the adjacent sand dunes. That area has been established. You saw in your visit that there's plenty of, what's that rock material called on the beach? Cobble. Yeah, plenty of cobble along the beach to be able to support the movement of whatever equipment needs to be down on the beach. And there was a question brought up previously about the fact that we have to traverse other people's property to do that. Keep in mind that the contractor is traversing my property to get to both ends of these installations. So I don't think that that should be considered a problem. I'd like to read to you, to refresh your memory, paragraph 21 of the Order of Conditions, which says, should the monitoring reports show an adverse impact to surrounding properties, an adverse impact to the project area, or narrowing of the beach to where the mean high water mark is contacting the base of the project, the applicant shall appear before the commission to discuss the proper action to take to mitigate the condition, including but not limited to the removal of the structure, repair of the structure, or revision of the nourishment program. I am asking you to amend this order of conditions so that the nourishment program comes via the point rather than via the existing spot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How long has the structure been in place? Is this the first winter that it's gone through, or has there been others?
No, this was the second winter.
And did this erosion start immediately after, or was it just last winter?
It was this past winter with the more significant storms.
That's what I was
The
gonna-
first winter was a very mild winter.
And
So we didn't really even move much of the sand cover.
did the,
We had, essentially 5 storms this winter. The first one in January didn't do a lot of the erosion, as I think I may have mentioned, because of the ice that had held it down. But then the February and March storms, like much of the island, those extraordinarily high storm surges that had, and one storm lasted more than 2 high tide cycles. Really, I think had been the most erosive that we've seen in several years. Certainly want to continue to work with Mr. Shapiro and the neighbors, and can take his alternatives back to sort of the whole group in terms of discussing whether to consider some sort of an extension. And I think that work would be covered under the current permit, so we can certainly discuss that. In terms of the relocation of the delivery point, I think that is probably the biggest sticking point. One of the difficulty isn't just of a machine, but it's in the transport of the volume of sand back and forth. And I think if you were to do it from the point, you probably would have to, you wouldn't want to do it a 3-yard bucket at a time. You'd probably have to get an off-road dump truck, which now is going to require staging. And then you have the town property at the end, and it's used by the kiteboarders, and it just seems to me to be something that there's several other reasons that, the access at the project is preferred, both logistically and I think in terms of minimizing impact. Not to say, I understand that there's concern. I think that having the, additional soft sand there, is only gonna help. And as we said from the beginning, I don't think the fiber blanket should have been there. I don't think that necessarily caused, necessarily impacts from that, but I do think that it may have limited some of the sand that should have been available more for the beach. The bank, there is a long-term published rate of erosion, for the area. And we didn't see, while there certainly is, erosion that happened, I didn't see, on the magnitude of several feet or some particular area that I think is worse or attributable to the project. So I don't want to be at an impasse. I don't think that tonight we're in a position to make any changes to the project, though I think we should continue to discuss and, whether or not some extension maybe is the way to go. I can bring back the idea of the, alternative proprietors road. That, of course, the one which would be, that essentially would be at the western terminal end of the project, so whereas the current one is pretty close to the middle.
Is there a proprietor's road to the east side as well?
There probably is.
That's outside of the area of concern.
Right.
It's much further to the east.
Is it?
Yeah.
But it's still within the scope of the work. Is it?
No,
Okay.
probably not. Because there's an NCF property, which is the easterlymost boundary. We don't run up against
Where the wetlands
road
are?
on the east side, whereas, as Mr. Shapiro said, the west end of the permitted project is a proprietor's
Gotcha.
road.
I'm just thinking for a moment, there is a proprietor's road. This is the current one that we're using,
That's right.
right?
And then here's Ken, and then there's the
Right,
next one.
but there is one here.
But certainly the aerial makes it look as though there's one there. But
I could double check.
But Art, you've put your finger on, I was
Right,
thinking,
see
well,
where these beach chairs are? There's a proprietor's road that goes through here.
I'll have to double check. There's a reason that property line is out like that. I think there's some title
gotcha.
stuff that.
But when I walked along the entire length, I was thinking, well, how does one prove the difference between potential NSCAR and the fact that the unprotected property has just received the sort of erosion that would have taken place along the entire length if there hadn't been the protected part. And I was wondering how one could do that, if there were any large-scale measurements that could actually show the sort of from 3 years ago on the unprotected property as to now, because it looked fairly consistent all the way along. There didn't seem to be much NSCAR involved, so much as consistent movement back from natural erosion. So I'm not trying to minimize your observations, Mr. Shapiro, I assure you. But, I was wondering if there were any tangible measurements to back your assertion.
I would say, I think that what you said is exactly the best that we can do, that's the continued monitoring. And you'll notice on the plan, I think with each report, show the top of bank location to be sure that there is not some extreme abnormality as opposed to a fairly linear regression. And erosion is never perfectly linear, right? There's always what I call a scalping. It's like the beach goes and it's, but that doesn't negate that we still would look for a significant, change. And that's why I did take the time to explain that rock, that was a spot that I saw looked something like that, but what I felt was a reasonable explanation. And again, I think that part of this is, again, continuing the extra sand cover at the ends such that it softens any wave refraction, right? Because a phenomena of scour is a function of reflected wave energy, which has a greater ability to carry additional or heavier sediment particles that bounces back, much like the preference is a sloped versus a vertical face. So you have a sloped face and you have sand. Now the question becomes, in a storm event following, if the sand was not there and now it's refracting off of a fiber roll, is there an impact? And that's what we're looking to study. We're looking to maintain the sand. But again, I would say that it's a stepped and sloped surface that makes up the array. And the surface itself of the fibrous material, there's an absorption factor that's happening there. All of which is why I think that, it's not, we're not seeing a kind of bounce back, if you will, energy that's the same as would be off of a hard surface that doesn't absorb it.
Yeah.
But we're looking for exactly that. I don't have a better tangible.
Right.
The aerials, historic aerials as we looked at, the CTM data, and now the actual on the ground studies that will continue. We can, continue to monitor that.
I think one of the best times to see that, because I was out there after those storms, is immediately after the storms, before you guys have a chance to recover. You can really kind of visually see how much sand we're taking off of the core logs versus erosion that's happening on adjacent properties. And the only spot, and I think we've talked about this before, that I saw what looked to be end scour was at the far east end, the little like terminus there,
That's
and
right.
you're able to kind of fill that after the
A
fact.
very limited distance.
Yeah, it was just a
8 feet or
small swirling that must
My
occur there.
observation is that it is localized, is that the limit of that essentially refracted energy that still carries some force, if you think of it almost from a physics point of view, is, it's not something that's going down the beach 30 or 40 feet.
The best way I can answer your question is I refer to the beach stairway. It was permitted 25 years ago because I looked at that file, and that has been standing there intact for 25 years. Has not had to be moved back.
It may be just, sir, it may just be a bit premature since that, especially that second storm last winter, the water was so high. I mean, there were unusual impacts all around the island as a result of that storm. And it may just have been an unfortunate situation where that pocket that eroded so bad may have just been one of those places where the bad thing gets, for things I certainly don't understand the physics of how these things get focused, but they tend to get focused often. And it may just have been a combination of that extreme high water, the way the winds were, and I don't know if that pile of sand, maybe that did have something to do with it. But I couldn't make a judgment. At this
I
point.
kind of agree with you. I hope that this is a one-off event and that this won't happen again. I don't want to be back here in front of you next year saying, oh my gosh, guys, we lost another 3 or 4 feet in the same location because we still have that sand chute there. I don't want to be that. And I'm sure you don't, if you were standing in my shoes, you wouldn't want to be doing that.
No, I hear you, I know. I'm not sitting, I don't live there, so I know it's very different.
Right.
Well, I think the important part with all of these, and I think this is the purpose of the monitoring report and have people come in and going to see these things, is if your attention doesn't get turned to it, it's something that can be missed or get carried over. So it's something where everyone can be paying attention to it. So if we know we're looking for it, we know we've seen this as an issue, a potential issue, it's easier to then kind of continue vigilance towards it because we know it's something that's been a concern that's been raised. So it's I mean, what do we permit today? 3,106. There are 3,106 orders of conditions that are kicking around on Nantucket in various states, whether they're certificates or not, and some have been amended or not, that there's a lot of permits to keep track of. And I think having this discussion and going to see it is the important part, because now we know that this concern has been raised, and as we look into it, or as there's storm reports that come in, it's something that we immediately know to look at and to check. So I think that's important, and I think that it's good that the report was solid and can go forward, and it's good that the people that are living in that area feel comfortable enough to come in and talk about it and have a reasonable discussion about those things. It's not always that way, so it's nice.
You know, having said that, if we had a large-scale survey of the portion that is not protected from a fixed point, then we could actually, we would be able to judge more accurately to what extent there might be some end scar as opposed to what extent the loss is uniform throughout the unprotected part. I mean, that would be the only way to actually approach it scientifically, as opposed to anecdotally.
I think aerials get at that, to the best sort of way that we can look at that. We obviously can't just go surveying other private properties, along the whole top and locate.
No, but Mr. Shapiro has his section that is, unprotected. And then the gentleman to the east, was that the gentleman we met? Or
The
was,
gentleman actually lives immediately to the west.
Oh,
of me,
okay.
But yes, you're right, the property to the east of me is also unprotected.
right,
And
and so, I mean,
Sorry.
so, if you both agreed to have an accurate survey done, and you came in front of us next year and said with the accurate survey, that, you'd had end scar, but in the middle you hadn't lost any, I mean, that would give us something to act on.
It'd been nice if we had done that 2 years ago.
Well, we have information.
We're in something of a bind on this side.
The good news is, in this case, I mean, we do have survey information prior to the project, because this was an area, Mr. Shapiro's lot holds a permit to have the structure that's there, so it was included in the original survey plan. So the good news is there is a pretty fair amount of baseline information for that whole shoreline that we took in as part of the initial filing. So that exists. It's not like the last survey was from 1985. So
Right.
Well, there's no denying, Mr. Shapiro, that the west side of your property seemed to have taken a very dramatic hit in that high tide storage. There's no denying that the west side of your property took a very dramatic hit from the high water storm you had. But I took quite a few pictures of the area out there, and continuing on the unprotected area east, there was a couple other areas that had slumped off fairly well.
Correct.
So it's, like Ernie was saying, it's hard to tell what
Right.
focuses or where the focus comes from, and of course, you're right next to that ramp, but it's getting a little bit going east also.
Does anyone have any objection to putting this same array on my property adjacent to the sand chute? Would anybody object to doing that?
We'd have to see a plan. I mean, we'd have to go through.
It was part of the initial.
The plan was already permitted, and it's
He
on
just
my
decided
deed.
not to.
Oh, it is.
Right, it's on my deed already. So would anybody have any objection to doing that?
well, it's already permitted, so they can do that. If there's a return or something where it modifies, 'cause I believe the section on your property, Mr. Shapiro, was shown as kind of straight, is it may take a modification to the plan that shows where it returns. Because right now, since you were in the middle in the original design, and there's the two returns on the easternmost and westernmost ends, and then it's straight through the middle, that if it comes across part of your property, then the return goes. I mean, you'd have to file at least a minor modification to get that in, but I don't want to speak for the commission and say this, minor mods are typically, I've never seen them get turned down. So it's a pretty straightforward process.
So then, of course, it begs the question is who's going to pay for that? Am I going to pay for that, or the neighbor's going to pay for that?
I can't answer that.
That is between you guys.
I'm just the surveyor.
If there's an an approved plan and it's still good, I mean.
That's right, the order is current.
Yeah,
Yes.
then you're good to go.
No, Art, even if you didn't, even if that wasn't the delivery point, you would have put sacrificial sand on the end of that
That's right.
roll. Probably not quite as much as would have been there,
For the
so.
ramp, I think there's more.
Yeah, so I mean, there's always gonna be, no matter what, there would always be,
Is there an array under the ramp?
No, it stops to the west side of the set of stairs.
yeah, so.
So it's about 20-something,
Yeah, there's a set of
25
stairs
feet
between
or
the
so.
sand and
from the property line.
Yeah, unless we sort of manipulate the shape of the pile, but I don't know if that would really matter that
In a
much.
storm situation.
For a storm
it's all
situation.
gone anyway.
Right, but I'm just saying to fair it out some more,
Well,
but
it sounds to me like Mr. Shapiro and Art need to have a conversation about some of those possibilities. And then if they do make a change to the approved plan or going to do something, they have to come back. So I think if that discussion goes on and Art looks into the delivery points, are there any changes, they'll be back in front of us. So I don't want to say it, but it sounds like everyone has a little bit of homework to do, but not crazy amounts.
Yeah, we're committed, and the clients are marking forward, want to be good neighbors without a doubt, and that, that's why we continue to be here and have the discussions. So I would say I can give you a call and next week and look at what we can do, and take the alternatives into consideration. And what we'll do for the commission is the same, continue to monitor this and take photographs and survey it, and we do have the good survey data, as you say, of,
We have it now.
the top of it. Well, we also have it from a couple of years ago, but where I did do sort of a break in where it's shown at the plans was I had provided, as you probably recall, a set, not only was there was a set of pre-construction plans, and then we did the post-construction plans, and now we're doing the monitoring plans. So you'll see there's a couple top of banks on there, but they're all post-construction. Because I don't think it's fair to or accurate to then, as you're doing monitoring, to look at a line that was from pre-construction. Right, because you're evaluating the performance of the post-installed
Well,
system
and the construction brought back the top of the bank as well.
in some cases, right? So, I'm committed to, meeting and trying to do the best we can to meet the concern.
I just like the opportunity to come back to you if things turn from bad to worse. Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
We don't have any other monitoring reports.
No other monitors, okay. Enforcement actions?
Just a quick update. So I'm going to be meeting out on site next week with Rob McNeil in regards to Sacagawea. I'll probably be in touch with the landowner prior to that too, to try to schedule a time for all of us to be there. I say that very cautiously because one of the commissioners is a representative for the landowner out there. So to try to get that, so we may be back to go through when all of that was. Rob and I were just not able to link up at the end of August and find a consistent time when we can both get out there for like an hour together. So we're hoping next week. We are starting to block times out now to do that, but for a different project, we had to schedule a date. I think we were meeting on like the 11th of September to look at something. So August is fun. It's great times. So that may be back in front of us. We're just trying to figure out what exactly went on and the size and scope and where they got some of their information from. Cross all our T's, so to say. But nothing else.
Okay, that's it for enforcements? Okay. Courts, CPC?
No.
And PDC, no, we had a long, drawn-out, unfocused meeting. Jesus. Oh, my God. That was kind of funny. But mosquitoes?
Nothing to
No
report.
mosquito. Okay, no other ones? Commissioner comments?
Can I just clarify the SBPF schedule? That our first 2 meetings with them are on weeks that.
Yeah, they're
we're
field
out.
viewing days. It's the only time the room was available. So, sorry guys.
And then after that, it's.
Then we're
separate
free and clear.
weeks. Okay.
Okay.
Make sure it wasn't.
This whole room shenanigans has made scheduling these things impossible.
All right, so we have the 17th of September, 1st of October. I
Correct.
just want to go over this one more time. 17th of September, 1st of October, 22nd of October, 5th of November.
Yes.
19th of November, and the 3rd of December.
Correct. Because then we start dodging holidays too. So we didn't want to get too far afield. And like I said, we can always add more. We don't have to use them all. So it is just a kind of getting it started to get it going, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
I won't be here on the 17th, but at least this time around, while I'm calling in, I won't be straining your patience by having a voice vote, so.
Yeah. So just to remind everyone too, is you should be able to still be downstairs. You should be able to actually live stream that too.
Would be
So
great.
you'll be able
Yeah.
to watch and see the
Yeah.
screen and those things.
And of course, you'll be live screen too.
Right.
We'll put a monitor in your
I'll be
chair.
watching your behavior, Andy.
Dozing.
So again, I think we had talked about, and we'll talk about at the hearing, about trying to have a set time for ending too. So we're not there for 6.5 hours.
That'd be good. I think it'd keep everybody more focused too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one wants to start bleeding from the ears and eyes.
It gets cold down there anyway. Okay, any other commissioner comments?
Happy birthday, Dave.
Thank you.
Happy
Happy birthday, Dave.
Okay, so the best thing about my birthday today is at 6 o'clock this morning, I found out I'm gonna be a grandfather.
Yes.
6 o'clock.
My son,
A lot better.
Congratulations. That'd be cool.
FaceTimed me, and he's like, hey, happy birthday. And led right into it. I was so excited. Made my best birthday
Awesome.
present I've ever had
So when are you going to be,
Had to top.
when's this happening for you?
in March.
Nice.
Nice.
It's great. First one.
There you go.
So
Grandpa LaFleur will be able to start calling him.
Very excited.
Grandpa LaFleur. Yeah. Oh, Grandpa LaFleur.
You do need to think about what they're gonna call you. You do need to figure out what they're gonna call you. It's important.
It's Pepe.
Pepe.
Pepe?
There you go. That's a good one.
Any administrator staff reports? No.
I'm saving all my comments. for
Excellent. Okay.
Future hearings.
Oh, great.
We have a motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Definitely.